And we'd like to welcome you into Your Home Authority with Bryant Heating and Air. We're so glad to be with you today. 402-489-1240 is our number. If you have a question about your HVAC system, give us a call. We'd be happy to help you out today. We're going to talk about what has changed over the last 2 decades or so in your furnaces. And a lot of stuff to really go over with this one. So if something comes to mind you'd like to ask, give us a call, 489-1240. One lucky person who calls will get a free furnace check from Bryant Heating and Air. And I tell you, when they go through and they check something, they are thorough. They make sure things are working the right way. And, of course, Danny and Reggie are both here from Bryant to chat with us again. Gentlemen.
Morning.
Good morning.
How'd the snow treat you?
Well, it was better than 10 to 12.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Yeah, I tell you. We'll take...
Welcome back, winter.
Yeah, we take what moisture we can, but I'd much rather see it in the form of rain than in snow. But it sounds like we might get a little bit more, and it's going to be pretty chilly for a little while here, so it's important to make sure those furnaces are working proper. They're going to get a little bit of a workout here as those temperatures will probably remain right around the freezing mark for a few days. So that free furnace check could come in handy for someone who calls in to ask a question, 489-1240. But before we get into the meat of the show here, with something we've been talking about a couple of times the last few weeks is the Pinewood Derby, Danny, that you're kind of a part of here. And that's coming up. Is that tomorrow?
It was actually last weekend.
Oh, it was last weekend. Okay.
It was last weekend.
How'd it go?
It went excellent.
Did you win?
Actually, yes.
Nice job.
Well, actually, my son won, but I'm not sure how that happened. But we'll take that win.
We'll take it. That's right.
Again, I just want to thank everybody who showed up. We had a tremendous turnout. We probably had between 150 and 200 people show up. Wow. We had probably around 30 cars that showed up to run in the open, and we actually raised just enough money to pay for that track. So
awesome.
So again, wanted to thank everybody for the support.
Very cool. Well, I'm glad it was a lot of fun and it was a success. And of course, anytime you get to do something like that with your kids, it's always something you want to take advantage of.
I hear you. Of course, after we got home that night, and his first comments were, "Dad, we need to build a car that's a lot faster than this year."
Even though you won,
even though we won, and I'm not sure how that happened either.
Tell you what, the kid's got standards. He's never settling.
I guess not.
Great, we won, but we need to win by more. Good for you.
So that was pretty funny.
Oh my goodness. Well, hey, I'm glad it turned out well. Today, we are talking about the differences between furnaces 20 years ago to today, and I think we've mentioned this almost every single show. Technology has a way of influencing everything in our lives, and sometimes we forget about things that just do. They just run. It just happens. Furnace is a prime example. Not many people just think of their furnace as something that, I need to maintain it. I wonder what's new in technology. It is what it is, and that's all that it is. But things have really, really changed over the last 20 years. And I think one of those is probably the technology and the way that these furnaces are put together when it comes to noise level.
Agreed. Our new blower systems that we have in our furnaces today, they're an ECM blower motor, which is very quiet. They're, when you have it in the on position, a lot of times people will hear that blower running, coming through their ductwork and hear that air noise. With the new blower systems, you don't hear that. When we have the fan switch set to on, it's gradually moving the air through the house. You do not hear that air noise. With our high efficiency or the 90%ers, we have all sealed combustion inside of it, so you don't hear any of the burners or anything. It's very, very quiet in the operation of that piece of equipment.
And that can come in real handy if you have light sleepers. And
yes.
Whenever that furnace kicks on, it's huh?
Yes.
And of course, if it gets cold enough and that furnace is kicking on every 20 minutes,
it just enhances everybody's comfort level and their sleep level at the same time.
Well, what about over the last 20 years? Size is always important because you have to make sure that you have the room to place the unit. And, of course, the first thing that you always want to do before getting a new unit is have Bryant come out to do the heat loss, heat gain, because that'll help determine what size you need. But in that sense, more powerful furnaces have come in smaller packages than they have, say, 20 years ago.
Yes. Now, our furnaces today are only 33 inches tall. They're not very big.
That's not big at all.
But that goes, it doesn't matter what size we go up to, about 130, 140,000. They're only 33 inches tall, and it makes it people have asked when the guys bring them into the house, they said, that's going to heat my house? Yes, it will.
Well,
It will.
compare that to 20 years ago. What was about the average size that you'd see a furnace?
Well, you could have furnaces anywhere from 46 to about 54 inches tall.
Wow.
And
So
they
we're
could
talking-
range anywhere from 17 and a half to maybe 24 inches wide.
That's a lot of space.
Yeah.
When you think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, especially if you have a smaller home.
Yes. And it will heat your house. When the guys bring it into your house, it will take care of it. Now, our new heat exchangers and everything, when you talk new versus old as far as size-wise, it's so key to have that heat loss and heat gain done, because the newer style furnaces today are not made to short cycle. I mean, if they do, the heat exchangers, they just will not last very long. They're made thinner to get better heat transfer from the heat exchanger inside of it to the airstream that's coming around it. If you don't have the proper airflow and everything set up with these piece of equipment, it'll shorten the life of that piece of equipment at the same time.
And when you say short cycle, explain what you mean by that.
Come on, run for a short period of time. Here a while back, we had a lady that called in, had a furnace, and it was only about a year old. That she had her gas bills were being very expensive.
Through the roof.
We ended up putting a brand new thermostat on there for her, because they left the old T87F thermostat is around, kind of a gold-looking thermostat.
Oh, the ones with the dial?
With the dial on it.
Looks analog, no digital stuff
And
on
it had mercury on the inside, and that mercury was just sitting there and bouncing back and forth. And we finally put electronic in there, and the mercury is not healthy for you in the first place. Mm-hmm. So we ended up taking that out, put a new thermostat in, and she was very, very happy with her furnace after we got done putting that new thermostat in there for her.
So if the newer furnaces, if they're not designed to short cycle, turn on, turn off, turn on, turn off, like probably almost every furnace that people own, that's how they have it set up. It's just you set for the temperature, and it gets to a point where it needs to turn on, and it turns off when it's done. How should people run a furnace?
Well, you mean as far as setting them back at night, or just running it on a regular basis?
Yeah, running on a regular basis. If they're not designed to do that short cycle, how should they run?
Well, the thing of it is, if you oversize your furnace, that's what's going to create that short cycling. And what it's going to do, it's got too much heat capacity and too much, it'll actually shove that air back up in through your registers, and it'll run for a short period of time and then shut back off. You need that longer run time that we have with our furnaces, and that's the reason sizing of that piece of equipment is so detrimental to the piece of equipment to make it last for that 20 to 25 years.
402-489-1240 is the number to the program if you have a question for Danny and Reggie from Bryant Heating and Air as we talk about furnaces. What has changed over the last 2 decades? And one of those things would be the safety features. Obviously, safety becomes more and more paramount as we go into the future. Somehow we just find ways to do things better, more efficiently, and safely. And we continue to find these different innovations out. How have the safety features changed over the last, say, 20 years when it comes to furnaces?
Well, probably 20, 30 years ago, you were probably lucky to find any type of safety devices on a furnace. Today, you've got limit switches, you've got sensors in there to know if the burners are running or how long the burners are. If they don't ignite after so many times, it's going to shut that gas flow off. Years ago, those once that kicked on, you might have had a pilot light in there, and that pilot light goes out. It's still trying to run. You're still throwing some gas in there in them real old furnaces. It still thinks it might be going. With today's technology, you have all kinds of sensors. It knows if that blower's running. It knows if that inducer motor's running. It knows if it's drafting correctly. So it has all types of safety devices in there. We talked a little bit about heat exchangers last week and carbon monoxide. That's probably the one sensor that's not in there, but it's that's why we have it is code in Lincoln now to have that carbon monoxide sensor in those furnaces. So as far as safety goes, it's the safety reliability is just huge compared to 20, 30 years ago.
Well, speaking of codes, we have to take a break, but we'll talk about how the codes have changed as well in the last 20 years. And take your phone calls, 489-1240. You have a question about your heating or cooling system. Maybe things aren't working the way they should be. Something's just off. You just know it. You don't know what, but you just know it. Give us a call. We'll see if we can help you out. 489-1240. We'll be back with more with the gentleman from Bryant right after this. Welcome back to the show, Your Home Authority with Bryant Heating and Air. 402-489-1240 is our number. If you have a question for the guys from Bryant, maybe you have a question about your furnace. If you have a question about your air conditioner, we're wondering why you're running your air conditioner right now. It's just open a window. It's cold enough as it is. Don't need that. But if you have a question about your thermostat, your heater, something doesn't seem to be running right, or maybe you just have a question in general, we'll be happy to answer it for you here on the show. Of course, one person who calls, we will do a drawing at the end of the program, and you'll win a free furnace check from Bryant. That's something else, too, that we should mention again. Your furnace, your air conditioner, they're just like your vehicle, like your computer from the previous show. It needs maintenance. This isn't something you just install and it runs forever, and you don't have to worry about it ever again. It needs to be looked at least once a year.
Yes, I agree. It's one of those things that's out of sight, out of mind. People tend to have a tendency to forget about it, which is a very good idea to have it serviced all the time.
Actually, I read something the other day when they talk about servicing your furnace. They talk about that for every year you don't have it serviced, you lose about 1% of your efficiency on that piece of equipment. So you can imagine just today that if you had a 20-year-old furnace and you've never had it looked at, you could be around, and if it was 80%, you could be around to 60%. Another way to look at that is 40% of every dollar that you're spending on utilities is going out the window. You're losing that.
Yeah, it's just money lost. You just might as well just start a fire pit with dollar bills.
That's essentially what it is.
I mean, that's what we're talking about here. So it's always important to do that. So if you have a question, this might be a great way to get that free furnace checkup, just to take a look at, make sure things are working properly. And if there are issues, now you know about it. You could take the next steps with Bryant. As we talk about furnaces over the last 20 years, a lot has changed. Technology really plays a role. What about codes? And of course, when we talk about codes, we're talking about building codes and, the stuff that you have to follow with the city and the county, state, whatever, all these rules and regulations. What's changed with furnaces over the last 20 years when it comes to the codes?
Well, there's a lot of those things that are called codes that everybody hates.
Yeah.
They hate being dictated to what they need to do. A lot of people, one of them is like on our 80% efficient furnaces, we do have to put combustion air grills into a room that has a mechanical room with the furnace sitting inside, mainly to get enough air in there so this thing can burn and also go ahead and draft the flue gases back outside. And that's one of those critical things. Most of these codes that have been designed for us has been where something's happened and maybe there's been an accident of some sort that's happened inside the house. And that's a lot of times how those codes are actually designed and brought in. It's strictly for our safety, not only for myself, but everybody else is out there to try to protect everybody. But it's a win-win situation. We have a lot of codes that we have to do just with our own manuals in our furnaces, how we have to install them, but then we also have the codes that we have downtown to actually make them to make it very safe to operate inside the house.
Now, do codes expire? Like, say something 20 years ago was put into place. Is that put into place and forever until maybe there's another meeting, if you will, and they go, you know what, this is kind of obsolete, or hey, we have this new code that kind of supersedes this and replaces it. How does that work?
There are always, every year, they have a board, and Ed Wachowski is on the board with the codes department downtown, and they have a committee that goes through all the codes and they try to refresh them. Some codes they may not need that anymore, and this other one will take care of it plus and take it a little bit further as far as trying to protect everything. That code board is very important because they go through that every year, try to see what they need to add to or maybe replace.
So not too much bloat code, if you will.
Yeah, it's
very efficient.
You want to, main thing inside houses with furnaces is, again, I said earlier, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. You want to make sure that everything is in the right way so you don't have any accidents inside the house. One thing you don't want to have is maybe flue gases coming back down inside your house because you don't have enough combustion air inside that mechanical room to make that furnace operate right. That was a major issue. Years ago, nobody ever knew if there was a backdraft coming back down through their flue. When we had our older furnaces, they had a draft hood at the top and did not have any draft switch at the top. So a lot of times people would put these fireplaces in. There wasn't enough combustion air to actually fuel the fireplace, the wood-burning fireplace. Well, then we came out with a draft switch on the top of that hood. I can remember when I was in the service department, I think that one weekend, the first time it got cold, I think I had about 20 or 25 calls. That draft switch was all everybody was tripping the draft switch, and it all had to do with combustion air inside the house. Just didn't have enough air to allow it to go ahead and draft up in through the flue.
And that's why it's important to have like some source of outside air. I know it sounds kind of weird this time of year. You're thinking, but it's cold. I don't want outside air in my house. I'm trying to keep the house warm. But you need to have that circulation.
Yes. We bring in fresh air from the outside on any gas-fired furnace. On electric furnace, we don't necessarily need to do that. But on a gas-fired furnace with a hot water heater, we bring in fresh air from the exterior of the house and bring it into the environment. That helps replenish some of that air inside the house that is being taken away all the time when your furnace is operating. Now, in your 90% efficient furnaces, we bring in our fresh air into our furnace, then burn it, and then exhaust it back out. So we're not actually taking any air back out of the house, but we still need to, because it is a gas appliance, we still need to bring in fresh air from the outside.
489-1240 is our number. We're going to take one more quick break, and we're going to talk a little bit more about new versus old. And this is something you might want to listen to, especially if you've had the same furnace for a while. You might catch something different and unique here in the next segment. If you have a question, 489-1240. We'll be back with more with Bryant right after this. Final segment of the show, Your Home Authority with Bryant Heating and Air. Danny and Reggie are here as we're talking about furnaces. Lots changed over the last 20 years. And one thing that has changed over the years is furnaces are becoming more and more efficient. And Danny, you posted this on the Bryant Lincoln Facebook page, facebook.com/Bryant Lincoln. Myth or fact? And we're going to answer this right now. Buying an energy-efficient furnace or air conditioner will automatically reduce my energy bill.
Well, you would think that was true, but
I would.
But here's the little but in here. If you have an improperly sized or improperly installed piece of equipment, according to the Department of Energy, that piece of equipment, even though it's high efficient, could use as much as 1/3 more of your energy consumption. So that's why it is so critical on that sizing and installation. I know we hit on it all the time, but even after the home show, we talked to a lot of people that were having some of these very similar issues, and the last few weeks, that's kind of what we've been doing, is running these type of calls and getting some of these issues fixed. Duct sizing, insulation, just getting duct insulated, and even replacing some flex here and there.
So the answer is it could, as long as it's done right.
That's the important thing right there.
Right there. It's not just about getting the new equipment. It's about installing it properly, and that's why it's important to call Bryant, get that heat loss, heat gain, make sure everything is figured out. You know the variables before you go into it. And speaking of that, a lot of people probably think I'm Mr. Homeowner. I like to fix things myself. When it comes to maintenance, Reggie, and these newer furnaces. Now, 20 years ago, you might have been able to get away with tweaking a few things here and there, and okay, we're good to go. New furnaces, there's a lot more to them now, and it's well, let's just say you probably shouldn't.
In your older furnaces, there just wasn't the electronics inside that furnace anymore than what there is today. There's flame sensors in there. There's rollout switches that are trying to make sure that the flames don't roll out. There's rollout draft switches that should be checked all the time to make sure those units or the pieces are in proper operation.
It's like vehicles nowadays. It was a lot easier to work on a car 20 years ago, but now there's so many computers and electronics involved. You open up the hood and you're wondering, where's my engine?
Yeah, agreed.
And they're hooking a computer in to diagnose what's possibly wrong with it. And to some extent, that's where our industry's going. We talked a few weeks back about thermostats and about emailing when things are wrong. That's almost our reader is the thermostats. It's gathering all that information, and if something's out of kilter, it's going to let you know. It's going to let that service tech come in there. He's going to be able to read what's going on, and he can get that fixed.
Well, of course, if anyone ever has a question about their furnace or maybe they need some work, easy enough, call Bryant. Phone number
467-1111.
And Reggie, we were talking about installing new, maybe
Yes.
you get that new furnace installed. The 1-year test drive does apply. Explain to that.
Yes, we have a 12-month satisfaction guarantee. No excuses. If you buy a piece of equipment from Bryant, If you're not satisfied with it in any way, shape, or form, we'll refund your money back.
Easy enough. Next week, since we've been going on this, what's happened in the past versus now, let's talk about heat pumps, because that's something that still not a lot of people, more and more people are getting into using heat pumps than, say, 20 years ago. Let's look at that next week.
Sounds good.
Well, until then, everyone, have a wonderful weekend. Don't forget to check out BryantLincoln.com. Also, go to the Facebook page throughout the week, facebook.com/BryantLincoln. Danny, Reggie, we'll see you next time.
See you next week.
Thank you.